if you could have AI making really meaningful recommendations, you still need the sourcing person with their knowledge of the data, knowledge of the market, knowledge of suppliers to take the call. Each of us as human beings to consider the impact of our daily actions, right? It's not just about companies. It's not just about, okay, if my employer takes care of it, I'm good. Don't get into a rapid scale, I want to become a team, company of 100 people in the first year. Go slow, build trust, become a trusted advisor, trusted partner, learn your customers data.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning into Product Unwind. In this episode, we have a very special guest with us. Hi, Meenakshi. Welcome to Product Unwind.
Thanks for having me.
So, how was your day, Meenakshi, today?
Fantastic. I was just happy it was Friday.
Yes, exactly. Wonderful. So, if you could give a brief about yourself to our audience out there.
Sure. So today I lead the strategy and transformation in our India Center of Excellence in Microsoft Cloud Supply Chain, and I have about 24 years of experience in the data analytics space. And happy to be here today. Aside from this, a very special part of my life that I also would like to share is I love uh, urban farming and sustainability. So that's a piece that also helps me in my career. So happy to share some snippets from there as well. And thank you again for having me in this audience today.
Thank you so much, Meenakshi. So, what was your journey into transitioning from software engineer to a leader in data analytics? And what
Sure.
are the key advices would you give to someone starting to get their career
Sure.
in data analytics?
Sure. So I started as a software engineer when I finished my master's. And I think I very rapidly came to the conclusion that coding was not my calling. And I did a few roles at the point where it was the age of Web 2.0, early 2000 startups. And most of that was around ed tech, user experience, and so on. But it was around that time, early 2000s, when analytics started to really becoming a thing in India. And I had the good fortune to be part of a team that bootstrapped the one of the first marketing analytics centers in India. And as a part of that, for 2 years, it really opened my eyes to global markets and how marketing analytics really works in the CPG retail space. So I had a great opportunity there. And then from there, I moved to the high tech domain, which is where I've been for the majority of my career. And I joined Hewlett Packard. And over there, for about 14 years, I think I had a very unique journey where I was able to go across the entire journey, right? I started in marketing, and from there I moved to sales strategy, and then sales operations, supply chain operations, and eventually in services. So I think in those years I really got to understand the entire customer life cycle, the entire product life cycle, and how analytics can play a role in solving problems for business in each part of the chain. So I think now I've been about 2.5 years in Microsoft, and I learn something new every day as we modernize our data strategy for our cloud supply chain. So my recommendation, to anyone who is starting a career or is pursuing a career in analytics is never lose sight of the business problem, right? I think, methods, techniques, technology, that keeps changing. And, every 2 to 3 years, you'll see that you'll need to upgrade your skills and all of that. But fundamentally understanding a domain, being able to speak business language, that's what will set you apart in your career eventually. And being able to focus on how you solve the problem versus come up with a theoretical model or a theoretical technical innovation, that's what makes or breaks successful careers in analytics. I think I've seen that throughout these 24 years.
Thank you so much for those wonderful advices. So, let's get into our episode, Data into an Action. So, what is data analytics and what is big data?
The large, diverse, all kinds of fast moving data sets, that is big data. Whereas data analytics is about how do you extract insights from that data, right? And data analytics borders on the size of the data doesn't matter. What matters is what are you able to garner as coherent insights from the data, right? So I would say that data analytics works on a foundation of big data technologies, right? And where you have to deal with massive data sets and so on. But it's also about how do you really connect with the business problem? How do you use that data and make the data work for you to solve a business problem? That I would say is the difference between analytics and big data.
Thank you so much, Meenakshi.
Yeah.
So can you share a real life experience and how has the data analytics helped a business make better decisions?
Definitely. I think there are many which are very dear to me. But I'll quote one which was very impactful on business ROI. So the scenario was really about building a life cycle view of customers, and very often, companies struggle to do that, right? And it was no different in this particular case. So we had to start from all the way with the first interaction of the customer with the organization. So let's say it's a marketing campaign or a request for quote or something like that, and then all the way to the time that they have actually bought from you, they're using your products and they sunset those products, right? This is a high tech example. So this is a scenario from uh, you know uh, how you build the entire infrastructure, and you need to partner with multiple organizations. So you have to work with the marketing teams to get their data. You have to work with marketing also to source external data, macroeconomic indicators. You work with sales on everything from your GTM data, your total addressable market, external information, again for sales, competitive data, and then all the way to services, like what is the customer experience with the product that is running in their organizations, right? And then operations, of course, the whole process of lead to cash, like when a customer comes, likes your product, places an order with you, how do you ensure that that experience is also going to be fulfilling for the customer, a happy experience for the customer, and as well as smooth for us as employees of the company, right? So getting everyone to see the value of building such a data set, incrementally expanding the coverage. And these are not projects that you can execute in a quarter, right? This was I think by the time we really stabilized, it was over 5 years. But so much value that was understood by being able to trace a customer right from the initial touch point all the way to booked orders, where the interesting way we designed it was you could tag every single conversion of a customer or an upgrade of a customer to an analytics recommendation. So analytics was seen as an equal partner in the whole program or the project, and we were clocking within from year 2, we were analytics itself was being quoted as a reason for over 500 million in revenue annually, right? So I think that kind of partnership is very rare, and it happens only when the analytics team is a trusted partner of the business. You really design the analytics for the business, right? And it's also I think a stellar example of this triad, right? We always talk about people, process, and systems. I think that is an example where everything came together, right? Then you can show that kind of very impactful business ROI.
Thank you so much, Meenakshi. So what are the typical processes do these top tech companies follow to handle big data?
Sure. I think it's a very standardized process. So it doesn't matter, whether you're on open source or AWS or Azure or GCP, right? So it always really starts with data collection. How do you determine what is the source of data? And then you have to have your processes around getting that data into the stack. So how do you collect the data, you normalize it, you ingest it, and then how do you store it in the right manner in a distributed system? And then you have to think about how to design the storage itself. So you need to optimize that storage. There's partitioning, there's indexing, ensure that you're able to read the data fast enough, right? Data backup, recovery, these are all very important pieces of building that entire framework. Then you have the actual processing. So today, most people use distributed frameworks. How do you this is where you do actual operations of the data, right? From filtering, the aggregation that you need, transformation that you need for the data to work for the customer, etc. And increasingly, as we build most of these on the cloud, you have to also design for auto scaling, for growth of your data, etc. So this is when you build, right? And then you need to get into that monitoring and optimization. So how do you make sure that your data platform is performing to your whatever SLAs you define? The efficiency is there. You have to continuously optimize your pipelines. Cost effectiveness is important over here, right? So those are things on the platform side. Then you come to how do you actually expose the data for your end user? So this is the consumption layer, and how people can easily discover the data. They have the trust in that certified data, as well as they find it easy to just use the data, whether it is to build a report or whether it is to mine the data, right, for a more of a statistical or an ML kind of a use case. Ultimately, the analysis and the consumption layer should also be equally intuitive for a business user to understand. And then, there's a very important piece, which is what I would call the wrappers, right? Around this, you still need, you cannot lose sight of data security, privacy. You cannot lose sight of the governance. You must have the policies. You can't react, right, to data outage later. Documentation, when you build a really good big data infrastructure, collaboration, making sure there's collaboration between different teams, people can use your data products. These are all very, very important part of that whole design. And finally, you have the data lifecycle management, right? This is things like what is your retention policy? When should you sunset your data? When do you declare that this data is no longer relevant for the business? So those kind of, I would say that completes the cycle for any kind of data infrastructure. So putting in place these processes very mindfully when you design the infrastructure is really what would make any organization make good sense of big data, right? And at the same time, you'll ensure that there is all the other good stuff around security and efficiency, compliance. But I think these are pretty standard processes. So nothing, and not say anything very different, right? But it's only, I think the skill lies in getting the talent who know how to do each of these processes in a very, very consistent and optimized manner.
Thank you so much, Meenakshi. So Meenakshi, what are some of the major challenges that business face when adopting data-driven approaches?
So if I think about it, I think every program or business or org I've been in, I think the first and most common issue that I have seen is, when they start the data-driven journey, is first of all evaluating what is the right data. And usually this is also a function of when you start the journey, there's multiple players, there's multiple systems, there's multiple existing ways of using data, and everybody thinks they're right? And how do you bring everyone to some kind of a convergence on what is the right data that you want to build as part of your ongoing journey, right? So I think that evaluation and getting to a conclusion on how you're going to progress with that single source of truth, which everybody talks about, right? Single source of truth is the first thing you put in a vision. But when you start, I think that getting away from everyone's understanding of what single source and single truth is to a common understanding is the first thing you need to navigate, right? And very often I feel if you phase your journey as, phase one is just getting to that conclusion, I feel that you spend almost 50 to 80% of that phase only bringing people together, only making them understand that here is the right way forward, right? So it's quite I would say an iterative adoption cycle where proving the quality of the final source that you choose, that decision, justifying that decision, etc. I think that is the first challenge people face. The second thing is, I think, taking the business along on the journey. So typically data teams can be very ambitious. They want to solve for everything. Very often the data team's vision needs to be understood by the business teams. You need to align a roadmap. You need to make sure that you're building data analysis muscle in the end user as well. So it's because otherwise you will put out a lot of data sets out there, a lot of data products out there. But if the end user doesn't know how to use that, ultimately your adoption is going to get impacted, right? So how do you spend that time on the change management, on the education? How do you make sure that every user feels they are part of the journey, right? And then the other challenge that I often see is everyone in business it's a no-brainer, right? Everyone is going to say that they want to have a data-driven approach. But when it comes to actually providing requirements and, explaining what their pain points are today, many business users struggle, right? Because most business users think of what they do in a day with data and what is it that is their personal problem. But it's really the job of a data product manager or someone in the analytics org to stitch together the pain points of multiple users so that, you get a holistic story. If you don't get that and you start again operating in silos, what you end up getting is again an infrastructure in data which is as siloed as the one that you started with. So I would say that these are the biggest challenges that any business faces. There are other things like cost is one, finding the right funding, the talent, all that is there, of course, right, which everyone faces. But I think if you keep it on actual focus of how do you make your data work for you, I think these are the things that you need to focus on. It's very similar to, when you engineer a system, if you spend the majority of your time in the design phase, the rest of the execution is very easy, right? But we often tend to jump to the solution. So very similar case in data as well, where spend the time, really understand the customer and design for that scale. If you do that, I think it's much easier to overcome the challenges that you have on the adoption side. I think that I would say is from my experience.
Businesses typically measure the success of their data analytic initiatives?
Sure. So for this one, I think it again depends on the maturity, right, of the organization. So depending on the size of your analytics team, how long they have been in that journey, measures will evolve, metrics will evolve. But I think I'd like to split this up as, two parts, right? There is one, which is how do you measure the success of a data analytics initiative around a business outcome, right? Like what have you actually driven for the business teams that you are building that data analytics asset base for? The other part is your own internal metrics for the data practice. So those are the simple ones, like, how are you going to certify your data? What's the quality of your data, usage, adoption, cost optimization, performance, a whole bunch of things there, right? Everything from how you test, your code coverage, anything. You can put all of those are all your fundamental metrics and internal process metrics to the data team, which is important. And that is there to mature the team itself, the data analytics team. But to me, the important part of the success of a data analytics initiative is always around, can you demonstrate the business outcome from what you have delivered, right? So from that standpoint, I think maybe I can share some examples. Like I was talking earlier about the case where, we were able to map the customer journey and actually, drive ROI. So I think, when you set up a marketing analytics kind of a infrastructure, typically you link, segmentation or recommendations that come from a recommendation engine to either the lead conversion on a campaign, right? That's a measure. Similarly, if you look at something like price modeling or market mix drivers, things like that, you actually translate that to the effective, how many customers actually bought based on the recommended price by the model, right? Now, if you go to something like sales strategy, there's so many things. So say in sales strategy, it starts with, first of all, understanding your addressable market and then zeroing that into what is it your GTM strategy is going to target for that particular fiscal year or a 3-year plan or whatever, right? Now, along with that comes the analysis on, now that you decide that, then how much are you going to allocate your sales force? Then it comes to what are the quotas you're going to set for your sales force. Then it comes to, channel related, compensation, etc. So it's a whole set of processes around sales strategy itself, where there it's all about the target achievement, your allocation versus were you able to actually penetrate into that market, were the channel partners able to deliver like you expected them to do based on your analysis recommendation. So all those are ways in which you can measure business outcomes, right? Now and then you go into the realm of operations. So in operations it becomes very interesting, because here it's all about efficiency, it's about cycle times, it is about the quality of your operations, right? So if you take order management, for example, customers want basically predictability, right? Whether it's a business to business customer or a B2C customer, the ask is the same, right? Everybody wants to know, if I've placed an order with you as an organization, when am I going to get it, and is it going to come to me at the time I expect it, right? So being able to use analytics to do that accurate monitoring, estimation, etc., is a great example of business outcome. Fine. And then if you take other like if you take financial services or healthcare, there's a lot you can do to set goals, right? Based on, whether it's improving service levels or, expanding your business and all of that. And you can directly map that back to recommendations that is coming from your analytics organization, whether it is statistical modeling or whether it is, data analytics, it doesn't matter, right? But you can actually do a direct one-to-one relationship between business success and recommendation based on data, right? So when you hit that level of maturity, I would say that is when you are truly a data-driven organization, right? Where the business and the analytics, those roles, and again, depending on different organizations, you could have a analytics team that is, it's centralized and performing on its own. It offers analytics as a service, or the analytics people can be part of the business as well, right? But regardless of whatever, right, that function needs to be very much embedded in the business strategy, in the business execution. And then you can do a really good business outcome measurement, right? And then the other part is, like I said, everything, from monitoring your reporting portfolio, monitoring the strength of your models, accuracy of your models. Those are all your standard, what is internal to the analytics practice itself. So two ways in which you should really measure the success of your analytics initiatives.
Thank you so much, Meenakshi. So what are the current trends in data analytics and how is it expected to shape in the next decade with the rise of AI?
I think you said it right. Like I think all the excitement in analytics right now is around AI, and it goes beyond analytics as well, right? It's almost become like AI is a part of any kind of initiative today with everybody. So I think if you think about analytics as the insight piece, statistical models, etc. I think being able to reach that stage where you can use AI to demystify complex methodologies, right? In such a manner that anyone can do analytics, right? To run a neural network, I should not have to be a qualified statistician. I should be able to, the AI should be able to help me do a couple of clicks, configure my questions for the data set, and then I should be able to run the algorithm, right? I think that's where the world is going in the analytics realm, right, with AI. So imagine really a world, right, where to do your job, you don't need to stand in a queue to wait for an analyst or a specialist on data or a specialist engineering team, but you have the curated data. Those roles are still important, right? They're there in the back end. They're making sure that the data is available and usable. Toolkits are there. So those roles are important. But coming from the lens of a lay user or a business user, I think the real value is when they can just in a couple of clicks or just go to a nice interface and pick what they want, ask their questions, and in a few simple steps, right, you get the answers that you want. And not only and those answers are trustworthy, right? So I think that's where I think the trend is going. There was a time, I would say early 2000s, we didn't have this differentiation between a data analyst versus a data engineer versus a data scientist, right? It was all, you just had one analytics role. So you either were an analytics specialist, that kind of, you were a business analyst followed by an analytics specialist followed by maybe a program manager or something, right? You didn't have so much differentiation between, okay, here's the guy who codes, here's the guy who analyzes, and here's the guy who can analyze but can't build his dashboards himself. So all of this differentiation is happening now as the stack also becomes more complicated, right? So maybe it's maybe AI will help us to simplify that a little, where a lot of the interaction with analytics for the lay user is much more simplified. Maybe that's where the LLM models maturing will really help people to just query a product, and we cannot lose sight of the fact that that underlying data platform still needs to be robust, right? None of the things that we said before about the processes and ensuring quality, nothing goes away. Without all of that, everything else will fail, right? That still holds good. But I think that's what we will get to, where citizens can, do their own little analytics very in a simplified manner. So I think even if you look at some of these other trends, right, as a consumer, look at some of the possibilities today where you can just upload your using some prompts to some of these AI apps. You can specify what your dream home should look like, and you get a render in minutes, right? Do you ever imagine you could do that even say 2 years ago, right? Or it's been here maybe in the fashion industry, it's been there for a while, where you can upload your image and you get a very quick recommendation for how you should plan your wardrobe, right? So these are things that really impact every last person. And then if you think about the business side, the enterprise side, think about someone who, let's say, is I'll take an example from supply chain, where one of the most complex processes is how do you get the right price with your suppliers. So what if you could have AI making really meaningful recommendations? You still need the sourcing person with their knowledge of the data, knowledge of the market, knowledge of suppliers to take the call, but you can be so much more productive, right? So I see those things happening, and that's from the usage. But the other aspect, if I think about data technology today, right, we have immense processing power. and the ability to scale today. I think that in itself is a game changer, right? Many of the techniques and methods that maybe were constrained, even say 10 years ago, by compute or storage, today that's not even a problem, right? You still need intelligence and human intelligence to make decisions, but the ability to process and make sense of big data, so many mission critical applications now, is so much more possible, right? And so I expect to see a lot of that kind of futuristic development, especially say in healthcare or other applications which can actually ease our lives with these capabilities, because some of these fundamentals like compute and storage are they are no longer the bigger constraint, right, for analytics. So I see those as, I think, the trends which will help us leapfrog, right? And I think the next 5 years, forget about the next decade, next 5 years, we'll see a lot of game changing applications come.
Thank you so much, Meenakshi. So, what are your thoughts on evolving ethics of data usage and privacy?
So I think my personal opinion is, the intent is there, right? I don't think anyone wants to let loose any kind of data issues, privacy issues, or getting data into the hands of bad actors. But we have a lot of governing bodies. We have many kinds of attempts to put in place policy, governance, and so on. But I think the pace of change is so rapid, right? And most of our actions are very reactive on the business side. B2B, B2C doesn't matter. So I think it's very rare to see privacy and data protection being thoughtfully built into design upfront. It's also a very expensive implementation. So it's really, I think, the larger enterprise, those who can afford, to do that, they take care of these aspects. A lot of the big, let's say the financial companies or banking, they have no other option. They do need to do that. But I think we have a long way to go before data usage and privacy is really part of the DNA of an analytics organization anywhere, right? It has to go from, it's not just your bigger organizations, it has to be part of the design process in every last analytics outfit, whether it's a 2-member team or a 500-member team, it doesn't matter, right? So I would say that today we are very reactive. And I think, the other aspect is, as consumers, most of us are unaware, right, of our data rights in the first place. So I'll give you a very simple example. Today in the social media world, a lot of small businesses are on social media, right? And you don't think twice about sharing information via these unprotected platforms. I think so many people, as an example, if you transacted with a small business owner, who's selling something through, say, Instagram or a Facebook marketplace or even eBay or any of these platforms, right? So many e-commerce platforms. That's an example where you already exposed yourself. You have no idea whether your data is safe. Similarly, as simple as, here in India, you visit a friend, you're leaving your mobile number with the security guy in a security book at the entrance gate. That itself is exposure, right? So a lot of this is where we are not even aware of what our data rights are. And yes, we have all kinds of, policy on do not disturb on mobile phones and ability to block and all that, but it's not inherently built into the policy and process, right? So I think we have a very, very long way to go. Expecting government or legal protection is, I think, it's a bit of a dream at this stage. So I think the important thing is people must educate themselves on the ramifications of having their data all over the internet, right? And you should take precautions to protect yourself. Don't rely on anything. Maybe your bank has got tight rules and regulations, but many other things that you interact with do not, right? So you must have that. You must exercise that precaution, definitely. And I think each one of us is in it on our own, right? End of the day, you go click on something and you lose money the next day. Nobody wants that, but it happens because we are not educated. So I would say my thoughts are, today we are reactive. we need to get to a stage where data usage and privacy is front and center of any data strategy and data conversation, in the way you design your infrastructure. But until that day comes, it's pretty much in our hands, right? Each of us needs to start thinking about it and protecting ourselves.
Thank you so much, Meenakshi. So now, as we spoke about ethics, now let's talk about gender diversity. So how is gender diversity making impact in data analytics field?
So I don't think the analytics field is any different, right, from any other profession. Everyone benefits from diversity of thought and diversity of perspective. So I think different genders always bring a different point of view to the table, right? And that's the same here. But I want to actually maybe quote a couple of interesting research, and this is from one of a book that I would recommend everybody to read in this context, it's called Invisible Women. And this actually talks about how over the decades, most product design has always focused on the male gender as the primary user of a product, right? And women, or those who identify as female, have always been ignored as a target audience. So classic examples are, which the author quotes in the book, is, when cars were designed, right? The ergonomics are always designed for men. So car seats are designed for the average height of men, not women, right? The positioning of, therefore, automatically the positioning of the clutch, the brake, the where your the gears are located, all of it, right? Everything is related to the average height and dimensions of the average male. That, and then you continue that into the whole testing process of automobile development, right? And then later on, you realize that the data has said, she's quoted a lot of fantastic data in the book. Later on, you realize that the average accident can be tied back to this kind of non-ergonomic parameters when it comes to women who were involved in accidents, right? That's one example. Another example that is very it's quite frightening, is in healthcare. So a lot of our medical equipment calibration or tests, so for example, take cardiac health. Some of the cardiac health parameters that we are very used to today, they're all designed for men or the male gender, right? Whereas the biology of women is very different. So the parameters and the range of a lot of these tests need to be adjusted for women continuously. And that's happening now, lately. But in the 60s, 70s, 80s, none of this was even part of the design process, right? That's one. There's another, similarly, right? There is some disastrous consequences around how you design buildings. And when you don't design for women, when you don't design for children, when you don't design for people with disability, right? So these are all, it's not just about gender diversity, it is about designing for the user. And the user can be a whole plethora of demographics, right? So I would say, that this is something that's really, really important in data analytics as well, because when you make a recommendation, it's also about bringing that perspective, understanding how to interpret the data in terms of the real world, right? Not everything is about one data point or one trend and all that's a simple side of data analytics. But when you want to really bring a holistic analysis, you need to have that kind of perspective coming in, right? So that's one part of it. The other is, there's another really good book, it's called Range. And that one talks of how, the world needs both vertical thinking in depth, right? As well as that's your specialist, right? And it also needs lateral thinking, which is generalist. So if you don't, and that's another kind of diversity, right? So you need to definitely bring into any kind of initiative, this ability to think deep, which some people are good at, and the ability to think broad, which another person could be good at, right? And again, roles change based on the product and that person. So it's really important to staff your teams with that kind of experience, with that kind of past expertise which can bring value to the current project. So I think to arrive at balanced analyses, balanced recommendation, you need that diversity, right? And I think data analytics is that way a career where you don't necessarily have to be only a math grad or a statistics grad or something, right? This is a field where you can be multidisciplinary. You could have even been a sports person or run some kind of completely different career, but as long as you have a feel for numbers and a feel for problem solving, that's a great career for you to be in, right? So I think uh, those are two books which really brought out in a very stark way and with research how the lack of diversity, especially with data, has impacted so many decisions and so many product design over the years, which has actually been fatal for the human race. So very interesting books that I would recommend everyone to read.
Thank you so much, Meenakshi, for sharing these wonderful insights with us. So
Sure.
let's talk a bit about sustainability. So with all this huge amount of data being collected.
Yes, I think so. Sustainability it's all about making decisions really for not just immediate goals, right? It's not just about the bottom line, the top line. It's about the impact of your decisions to the rest of the world, to the ecosystem. And just like we have, the 5 R's, even in a business context, you need to start thinking about what's your priority. What are the kind of investments you want to make, and if an investment is going to result in a negative sustainable impact, are you willing to take that? And what's the offset you need to do? Like today, for example, um, data processing happens in huge data centers, and every data center is hungry for power, it's hungry for water. Not really the most sustainable uh, business to be in, right? But at the same time, there are things that you can do. Like there's so much evolution of the technology, where how do you recycle water within a data center, how do you reuse atmospheric carbon, how do you offset carbon emission with other interventions that you make. So there are things that a lot of companies are doing, playing a big role. But I think it's important for each of us as human beings to consider the impact of our daily actions, right? It's not just about companies. It's not just about, okay, if my employer takes care of it, I'm good, right? I think there is a need for each of us to start embracing more sustainable lifestyles. Then it becomes a way of life. Like a very simple thing I would say is, if any of us is still sort of lazily assuming that you go out today and you can always buy a bottle of plastic water, a plastic bottle of water, that should be your first no, right? You need to, when you step out of your house, ensure you carry your own bottle of water with you, right? Refuse to take a plastic bag or disposable bag wherever you go shopping. These are very simple things. And especially for us in India, as a nation, we have been pretty green until even, like, I would say 10 years ago, right? So there's no reason for us to get into the cycle of waste and then figure out how to deal with the waste. So I would say that think about sustainability also at a personal level. Evaluate your day. Look at what is it that you do on a daily basis that is contributing to non-sustainable impacts to the environment. And I think I think we're all in this together, right? The earth is the only planet where we can live. So let's make it conducive for us to live here. I would say, yeah, that's something that we all need to think about when you wake up every morning.
Thank you so much, Meenakshi. So with all these insights, if a new startup is getting started into data analytics, how can they get started with it?
I think they should, the first, of course, is the usual: having a mission, having a vision, right? I think it's important, especially in data analytics, there is a profusion of talent out there, and there's also a profusion of startups out there. So you must have as a startup, you must have a good sense of who your business is, who your audience is, right? Who your customer is going to be. You need to start thinking of how you build your infrastructure, right? Are you going to build your own, or are you going to leverage that of your customers, right? You need to start thinking of, how does your customer trust your data? How do they trust your processes with data? How do they trust their data with you, right? you need to start thinking of your operating model. How do you staff the teams? Do you actually employ a whole bunch of people and then wait for the customer, or do you strategize in terms of, uh, based on the contracts you hire, you staff the customer, you staff your people within the customer, and so on. So a lot of little things, right from how you grow, what is the domain you want to play in, hiring the right talent and the right leadership, I think is fundamental, right? How do you make sure that you have a leadership that knows how to bootstrap an analytics team? They know how to go from maybe 2 people to 50. I don't know, whatever number you want to go to. But I think you should be very clear that, focus on a domain. Start with one, whether it's healthcare, whether it's financial services, whether it's niche areas like, these days within healthcare you have so many niche players, right? So you have to think about those things and ensure you have the right specialists, because if it's important to get the right talent in your initial setup stage. That builds confidence in your customers, and then eventually you can think about expansion. I mean, don't get into a rapid scale, I want to become a team, company of 100 people in the first year. Go slow, build trust, become a trusted advisor, trusted partner. Learn your customers' data, because as a service provider, it's going to be very difficult for you to, first of all, what do you say, get the confidence of your customers to handle their data, right? So you need to take that time as a data startup to really build out, I think, your skill set, the trust with your customers, and then most importantly, manage your costs and infrastructure of data, because it can be very expensive. So I would say these are the 3 things to keep in mind as a startup.
Thank you so much, Meenakshi, for all these wonderful insights, sharing all these wonderful insights with us. So could you please share with us, how does your typical day look like? Any interesting stories?
So, like I said in the introduction, the other part of me is, I'm an urban farmer. So I have been growing food specifically. I do all kinds of gardening, but I am really passionate about growing food, almost 2 decades now. We started with a very small section of pots, on apartment terrace back in 2002. And today, I have a full-fledged garden, which gives us about 70 to 80% of our vegetable needs. And, I grow fruits as well. So that journey has really led me to a path of coaching people also to grow their own food. It's a beautiful, vibrant community in Bangalore, and I think it's very fulfilling for me, because this is something which, very tangible outcomes, right? You see people get so excited about, one little tomato they grew, or one chili, and I have people even in office, my colleagues, who come to me, and when I meet them, they come and share one little cucumber they grew, and say, thanks to something you taught me, this is, I could do this. So there's a very positive experience in that space. So my day really starts with a walk in my garden, connecting with nature. I think there's a huge benefit to just that connection, right? It calms me down incredibly. Work is obviously, work has its challenges, work has its pressures, but I think everyone needs something. It could be any hobby, sports, it could be gardening, it could be music, whatever it is. But I think starting your day with that anchoring moment is so important. So I think that's something that I treasure as part of my day, every day. And then I also, try to make sure I read a few pages of good books. No matter how busy my day, I try to not go to sleep without having read something. Other than that, I would say my work week is pretty packed. There's no time to do most things other than just general walk around the garden, little chores, and of course things in the house. But on the weekends, I do spend a lot of time learning something new, whether it is about on the growing side, or any other kind of skill, or just reading more trivia, or whatever it is, right? So weekends are spent on that. Both my husband and I are very, very interested in classical Carnatic music, so we spend our weekends listening to concerts, attending concerts, things like that. So that's what a typical day or week looks like. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Meenakshi, for sharing such interesting day with us. So we'll conclude the episode by 3 favorite book recommendations of yours, and also people who inspire you the most in this space.
Okay. So two I recommended. I would say I think Invisible Women is a very eye-opening book. Everybody should read. Range is the other one. Another book which is I read it early. I think in my 20s, and I really really appreciated that book back then. It's called The Way Is Within by Ron Rathbun. It's a book that very simply talks to you about how you must prioritize yourself, your life, and understanding early what is really important, right? And keeping your focus. So I think I read it several thousand times by the time I was 30. And I think it really helped me to stay the balance on a lot of things through these years in my career. So I would recommend that as well. In terms of people who have inspired me, I think in the data analytics space, one person who, right from the beginning, 2 decades now, Tom Davenport. He's widely regarded as the father of analytics. And Tom was Tom wrote some of the best books in those years, where you really understood what different organizations were doing with analytics and practical examples. And I must say here that I had a career defining moment in 2012 when Tom was actually presenting in this conference, Predictive Analytics World in Chicago. And he had reached out to our organization in that time it was HP, where he was looking for some nice stories. And I was thrilled because we shared with him a couple of things that work with us. And one of my programs, which was around how do we use analytics for better service, customer experience on the services side, and customer expansion and retention, he chose that as an example that he presented in POG. So that was a fangirl moment for me back in 2011. And until today, I think, through all the changes, and I really look forward to reading Tom's blogs and his books till today. So I would say he is one person who has always been inspiring to the analytics community. That's on the analytics side. And then I think on the other side of my life, when it comes to the urban farming and all, I would say that all of us were very blessed to have a fantastic teacher in he's no more now, Dr. B.N. Vishwanath. He is also referred to as a father of organic terrace gardening in India. And I was very fortunate to be associated with him and his team, part of a group that organizes regular events in gardening in Bangalore. And he taught me so much about the importance of not putting spaces to waste. Use every last little place to grow food, right? Connecting with your food, understanding the value of nature, which eventually led to the sustainability journey. And how do you zero waste living may not be possible, but at least how do you step by step get into low waste living, right? So I think Dr. Vishy was a major influence for many of us. And I would say that he's the other very inspiring person who changed many of our lives, right, by coming in at that time. Yeah, I would say them for sure.
Thank you so much, Meenakshi, for sharing all these wonderful recommendations with us. We're looking forward to host you again in our future coming episodes. Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I had a great time. Yeah, wishing everyone a great rest of evening.